Okay, to come out from executive session.
I make a motion to come out of executive session.
And we'll move to the next section. Roll call by the clerk, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And little prayer, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you for looking over us, keeping in your heart and close to you the tragic accident and the folks that were killed on the highway in New Hampshire. It's always a thing for all those families. Keep them in mind. Give us the wisdom to make good decisions for our townspeople, and amen. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jim. All right. Okay. Number 2 is President's comments. He's not here this evening, and I did not prepare anything, so we'll move on to the next part. Now, also a question. We've got minutes for 2 weeks. One of the meetings we had 4 of us, and the other one we had 5. Is it our pleasure to pass the minutes, or I don't know if the other council people have got concerns regarding those. We can, so that, okay. Do we need all right. I'll make a motion to table the minutes. Second, okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll table the minutes. Which brings us to the next part, the school department report. It looks like
Excuse me, Mr. Vice President?
Yes.
Is there any chance that we could move up Mr. Bill Finnegan on the DHSPD building? He's got other commitments that I'd like to be able to get him out of here as soon as possible, if that's okay with you.
I don't have any. Mr. Murray, you mind if we pass you by on this? And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Bill.
Very much, Mr. Dubuque. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr. Finnegan.
Good evening, everybody. So we wanted to present an update on where we're at with the building. We had an original date. We had an original date, as you know, of the end of July to finish construction. It's the beginning of July right now, and we are not going to hit that date. The schedule that we have come up with, I think, is fair and consistent. We had a few weeks at the beginning, some of you may remember, of our own internal issues in the town where there was a few week delay in getting permits pulled and things that were internally not as efficient as we would have hoped. And as we went through the project, we started with a total of $12 million, of which $1.2 million of that was for furniture and communications and lockers, which was in the budget, which brought us down to 10.8, which was a aggressive number to build the building and to do the work that we were doing. We got into the building and found leach fields in the parking lot that weren't documented. We found, we had the ball field connection for the sewer and the water had to be done. We found asbestos in the basement that had to be abated. We found undocumented modifications to the roof that had to have steel reworked, that there was no way of seeing that during the bid process. When we cut into the floors to do the utility work that we needed to do, we found that the original building wasn't backfilled properly, so all of the floors, not all of the floors, but a significant amount of the floors collapsed, so we had to re-pour the floors. So we figured we saved a couple of $1 million by renovating the building as opposed to starting new, but we had a lot of challenges. And Julie Letty and Tom Heatherman aren't here. They're on the committee with me, and I can tell you the committee has worked relentlessly to keep this project moving forward and on budget and get us in there. I think that we have a commitment from Tower that we will have a partial certificate of occupancy. He's met with the building inspector and the fire department, and they are committed to having a partial CO so that DHS can move in on September 15th. The police department has some equipment end of life. I know the colonel's going to get up and speak to this afterwards, maybe not, but there's some equipment that's being purchased that we want to make sure is the right equipment for the long term, and there's been a little bit of a delay in getting that equipment in, but on September 15th, the DHS side of the building will be ready for occupancy, so they can move in by probably October 1st, I would think. And the police department has already confirmed that the move-in schedule for them, some of their department will be able to move in immediately, and others over a transition plan that the colonel can speak with more specifics to that. So with that, we started with a budget of $12 million. If we take out the $1.2 million, which is the furniture and communications, we had architect fees of $570,000. We had architect expenses of $44,000. The original contract to the tower construction was $9,835,000. The town is charging $105,000 as previously approved to relocate and rent for DHS to the project. We had $1,627,000 in change orders, but $1,397,000 of that was in the allowance of the original bid, and the $1.2 million that we added in for the furniture and equipment into the tower construction's contract, which brings us to a total of $11,984,400. So we are $15,600 under budget as we stand today. And that number includes all of the change orders to date, and we're putting sheetrock up, so we don't think there's going to be significant change orders going forward. And the few minor change orders that they do anticipated are already factored into that. So it's my opinion that Tower Construction and Rouse Architects did a great job. A year schedule was very aggressive to begin with. We weren't the most cooperative to begin with in holding up permits for them. I don't want to steal any of the colonel or the chief's thunder about the fire department coming in, but the building is way better than what we originally planned on from a facilities and what's going to be housed in the building. And with what the changes that I just outlined, the unanticipated changes, to extend the contract to Tower till September 15th, I think would be the right thing for the town to do. And I would stand up with them and make that request. And I know you can't take a vote on it tonight, but I'm going to request that Mr. Wazika put it on a future town council meeting agenda so you can vote on it, because I would like to go back to them and extend their date to September 15th. Now, the reason we wouldn't do that is there are liquidated damages that the town may choose to go after them for $2,000 a day after the July 26th date. But I will tell you, I don't agree that the town should do that. They dealt with a number of items in a very difficult site and have done a great job. So I don't think that's the right thing. I think the town is getting way more than they bargained for. And at 12 million, people couldn't believe that we could get done what we got done. And that 12 million in reality is 10 million 8. So that's my update.
Well, thank you, Mr. Finnegan. I think you've done a great job with you and the committee in doing that, and I'm sure the council will take all of that under consideration. We'll don't know exactly. I guess it'll have to be on an agenda, kind of as soon as we can get it. The next scheduled meeting is at the end of July, so which is actually just before the end date of that. So I guess we'll probably look to put that on that agenda. That would be fine. The extension of the end date. So, any questions at all? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan.
Okay. All right. That puts us back at number 4. Mr. Murray.
Good evening. Luke Murray, Coventry School Committee. So I'm here to provide you with our monthly update. I had a distinct honor of attending the Coventry graduation. In the midst of everything going on in the town over the past month, we did graduate 340 aspiring students and, well, not aspiring, they're graduated, but hopefully moving on to bigger and better things. So we wanted to pay special attention to Mrs. Brooke Maycumber, who took over as principal of the high school, and anyone who's kind of seen the culture shift over there, some of the great things we have going on. It's inspiring. We have a lot of building level staff that are stepping up, and I think it's nice to see that. So we realized it on the school committee and wanted to convey that to the council, that great things are happening at our high school, and we also expect some great things in the future. Brooke is kind of a fresh perspective, but an old perspective. She grew up in Coventry, went through this Coventry school system, very dedicated administrator, and I expect great things. Also wanted to thank the council. I believe you were there, Ms. LeBossonaire, at the graduation, along with Council President McGee and Councilwoman Ann Dixon. So I appreciate your support. And Mr. McGee gave a very nice, poignant speech, which we all appreciated as well. So it was nice to see other representation there besides just the school committee. So we do appreciate. We are one town, and we believe that. Update on sports. We had some great news on sports as the high school boys volleyball team won the Division I state title, beating Hendricken at 3-0. So that was great. And our Lady Oakers softball had a great season, although they ended up losing in the division championship 7-3. We're extremely proud of them for the season they did have. We also wanted to congratulate Haley Oliver, who placed 6th in the freshman mile at the National Track and Field Championships. So another great exemplary example of our sports program that is now going to be continuing forward for sure. And then we just want to thank all our student athletes, coaches, and parents for another amazing spring season. So it was great to see, as we say in the school committee, it's a whole program. It's not just about the classrooms. And these students are stepping up, and we're competing at high levels. So committee actions, as you know, we got through the budget cycle. And because of that, we were able to recall 363 educators. Some have gone to job fair. We have positions that are open, and those will be filled, and we'll have an update on that. But it was nice to be able to bring back a lot of our teachers back to the classroom, and we're looking forward to forward to continue our programs as is, and hopefully improving as we go over the next year. We did obviously have to cut $350,000 out of our budget, and so that did come with a little bit of pain. We did take out the dean position. We're proposing on our last cuts to take out those SRPs, and we will likely have cuts to the middle school and elementary school, drama, different programs, after school programs. And we're discussing that, but we did pledge to the community we would sit down with them. The superintendent has said that he will meet with the PTA, PTOs, and try to deal with it at a building level and try to reduce the pain to our programs. So we know that we need to tighten the belt. The community spoke at the first denial of our referendum, and we acted accordingly, and we're trying to work within our means and our budget on that. But moving forward, we realize that we want to educate the community more. We want to work with the community more. At our last school committee meeting, we talked about setting up subcommittees for finance, for different activities, whether we had some great ideas come to the podium for revenue generation. And we want to really engage the community over the next year, much like the council has reached out and the town manager has. We're looking forward to doing the same thing. So I think that's positive, and we want to continue to work with council moving forward. So we're again speaking with one voice as a town. I have some good news as far as the SATs. This is relatively new news. Although Rhode Island saw a dip in scores, Coventry High School SAT scores in English and writing increased by an average of 15 points over last year. Math scores improved an average of 11 points. Coventry High School scores were 19 points higher than the state average in English, writing, and reading, and 18 points higher than the state average in math. So we'd like to thank our teachers and, again, our administrators. Again, with that culture shift in the high school, a lot of them took it upon themselves to create these Saturday programs to work with the students on practice tests, and I think you were seeing the tangible benefit of that. So that's great to see, and again, a lot of this is happening at the lower levels where people are just stepping up and making it happen. So we're excited about that. Final thoughts as we sort of reflect on the last month or so. We have focus areas that we're kind of honing in on as we move forward. ways to increase revenue and obviously cut the expenses as much as we can within our means, and we'll be looking at that moving forward. We do have back on the table, I had proposed a solar initiative where we might do virtual net metering to offset our $800,000 climbing electric bill, and that is moving forward. Our physical plant, Jason Martin is working with Office of Energy Resources on drafting an RFP, and I expect that will be going on fairly soon. So we'll see how that moves forward. We're going to be working with the administration and our selected design consultant for the phase 2 for the necessity of school construction, which is through RIDE, and that will enable us to take advantage of the housing aid. So while we don't have an inordinate amount of capital dollars right now to leverage that, we hope to in the future. And so one of my goals and the committee's goals moving forward is to figure out how we leverage that money, because that's $250 million that we need to leverage sorely for the construction in our schools. So that's sort of one of our pressing priorities over the next year. And then we're just going to continue working at all levels in the district to strive to be the very best. As I said it before, I'll say it again, and I think I can speak for the entire committee that we don't feel like we have a mediocre school system. We feel like we have a stellar, but we need to show that, and I think that's filtering down to the building levels that we want to be in the top, at least the top 3 again. So that's going to continue to take work on all levels, and that also takes work on your side as well. So we're supporting each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. This is actually one of the segments I really enjoyed since we've added it to the agenda, to hear exactly what's happening with the schools through the school committee. So thank you for your time. Okay, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, is number 5. If you would read that for us, please.
Discussion on the move of the fire alarm headquarters from the Stanley Murk Building located at 1111 Main Street to the new Human Service Police Department complex located at 50 Wood Street.
Okay, I guess, Colonel, I guess it's the ball's in your court.
I'm not that comfortable talking about fire things, so.
Well, I see that we have another player back there
Brought the
for
fire
the
chief.
so we can.
Chief Brown for expertise. I also brought Lee Bissett, who's done the lion's share of the work on this project. You're in receipt of the 3-page, 4-page memorandum I sent with the details of the project, so I won't go over that again. But we did send that out to all the fire boards. The fire departments are all behind it, specifically Chief Brown, who's here. And I think we just wanted to play, this is Chief Brown talking about what the current status is over there at fire alarms. So we'll watch the Yorker Shoes commercial first, give them a free plug.
Police footwear, nice.
But he does a good job here of capturing, where fire alarm is right now and their challenges. So it's about 2 minutes, I'd say. It doesn't look muted. Yes. IT challenges.
Engineering.
There we go.
Cooling company in Providence. She embezzled. I see tonight the Thunderdome victim, the guy who wore a wire to catch the antique.
So this is Plunderdome. You're going to have to go back, though.
Former FBI informant Tony Freitas says one of his workers was
You want to roll back to the other one? You got to read. It went to a different video.
Hey, Gene, well, there's a paper trail of purchases and bank statements, police say, that lead back to...
Keep going.
Hey, Gene, what...
There you go. That should be it. Yorker Shoes. It's catchy. It's very catchy.
Revenue generation, we're playing ads.
Send him a bill.
I think this is it. Chief Brown.
New developments tonight in an NBC 10 I-Team exclusive. What if Rhode Island's 911 money weren't diverted? As the I-Team has reported, millions of claims you pay never make it to 911. Instead, most of that money is deposited to the general fund. Now, following the NBC 10 investigation, state leaders are promising to change that.
So what might happen to that extra money? Well, the IT's Kitty Gates is staying on the story tonight from State Police Headquarters in Citrus.
Right now, you pay $1.26 on your cell phone bill every month in 911 fees, but only about 42 cents of that actually funds the state's E911 center here at State Police Headquarters. We talked with cities and towns who say that money is desperately needed to make upgrades on the local level.
911's emergency police fire.
Rhode Island took in about $17 million in 911 fees from your cell phone and landline bills last year. But the budget for the state's E911 center is less than $6 million. The rest of the money diverted to the state's general fund.
It is $10 million. What would we need in Coventry? I guess, 50,000 would get us a lot.
Wow. Central Coventry Fire Chief Frank Brown says the dispatch system covering all of Coventry is hardly state-of-the-art.
Coventry Fire and Rescue.
You won't find any computers here. Dispatchers still use a pen and paper. They have to look up locations in a series of 3-ring binders. Then they timestamp their run sheets, literally.
There's better technology out there today that we certainly should have our hands on. Emergency this time, or is it a non-emergency?
Every 911 call in Rhode Island goes to the E911 center inside State Police Headquarters. Then telecommunicators there transfer you to local police and fire dispatchers. Depending on your town, they may have to verbally repeat what you've already told them, including your location. All of this while the clock is ticking. Computers in many communities can't interface with the state system. And like Coventry, some have no computers at all.
We can't see anything that they have from the state 911 center.
And there's another problem that those missing millions in 911 fees could help solve. Something that's been going on for years, and insiders say it's impacting morale here inside the E911 center. I'll show you that part of the story coming up tonight at 6. In Situate, I'm my team reporter Katie Davis, NBC 10 News.
News by
Michelle, thanks from the NBC 10 I-Team tonight. The Thunderdome victim, the guy who wore a wire to catch the ante, says he's been taken advantage of again. Former FBI informant
Chief powered off.
There you go.
So that gives you a really good, just a pictorial view of what's going on at Fire Alarm right now. We've known about that for a long time. So we think it's the right time to do this. It's, coincides with us building a state-of-the-art dispatch center. We gave you the history of sort of our EMA fund and the communications fund that we have available to us to do that, to do this upgrade. And we just think it's the right time, and it's a good investment for the future for public safety to have our dispatchers side by side in one place. What I would say too, which isn't in the paper, is that we would have to spend money to connect ourselves to Fire Alarm anyway. So whether it was through the tower or through fiber, we would have to keep them in the public safety link anyway, and that could be anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 to get them, to keep them connected with us during the move. So to me, the investment that we're talking about to upgrade them is well worth it, because we have to spend money anyway, and then we're not continuing to leave them in that building, which is pretty antiquated. The town spends, I'd say, somewhere between $12,000, $15,000 a year on that building, just for the heat, electricity, internet, all those things. It's a town-owned building, so there's definitely cost savings there in bringing them into our building as well. So overall, we think it's a really good investment for efficiency, operations, for communication, and it's the right time too.
So we're talking about bringing them into the computer system, and that way we'll be able to get rid of the 3-ring binders, and
Yes.
and so all the communication now, the integration will be able to happen with the state through that as well.
Yes.
Because I think you're integrated with the.
We are.
the
We've
state.
been integrated since 1999. We
Okay.
use IMC. It's called as our computer-aided dispatch.
Right.
We were the test case for Rhode Island for modems and vehicles and that IMC
Right.
system. So we've been doing it a long time. it gives you so many more options. It's so much more flexible and efficient, and takes the human error out of using a book.
Just send it through.
It also
Oh, yeah,
allows
trying to find it, and time saving as was
Right.
pointed out as well too.
allows you to data mine too. Specifically, recently with the opioid crisis, we mine a lot of that data and we send it to the state.
Yeah, that data pops up, which you can't
Currently,
you can't find in a three
fire
reminder
alarm
somewhere. You know.
does it by paper.
Right, and done. Okay, and that covers all the fire districts. That's dispatch covers everybody,
It does.
and doing it. So, great. Any questions? Okay.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I just have a question about the fund that accumulated $200,000. Like, how was that being managed? And that was originally from 5 districts that were contributions, or 4 districts? So how was that money managed? Was that fund audited? And how is it being taken into account with the budget that is being proposed for this project?
I'm not sure how many districts were there when the fund was originated. I wasn't chief then. It was Colonel De Silva, who was the first EMA director in town. We can audit that. My recollection since I've been chief, things that were spent out of that were generally things on fire alarm in the neighborhood of $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. But we have records of it. We can provide that to you if you want.
I think that would be useful because the voters are always asking for transparency and how money is being used and managed. So I think that would be a good thing just to do an accounting of that. And then secondly, since it says here that there was $200,000 in that fund and that $60,000 had been used, that should leave about $120,000. So in the budget that we have prepared for us, I wasn't sure if the money in that fund was being used to help fund this consolidation.
It is. That's how we would do the consolidation, to use funding from the communications fund.
I just didn't see that number in this budget. It's probably here. I just couldn't recognize it.
The number that we have currently in the account is about 137,000. We have 140 here as a rounding, but that number is like 137,897, I believe.
And so that is in this.
That's currently in the account. We just we collect 2,500 from each district, and then the town EMA fund puts in 10,000 yearly on July 1st. So that money's flowed into that account now.
Mrs. Dixon, that money is also, it's in the town account. So that money is
Oh, is
audited.
it?
That account is audited every year when the audit's taking place.
Okay,
It's an automatic because it's a part of the town system.
so it's coming into the town.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's part of our system and it is audited.
So when I look at this budget, estimated cost of the merger, and I see a budget of $137,897, is that the money that's in that account already?
Yes, it is.
Yes, we have that money in the account.
Do we need any more money in order for the consolidation?
Lee has really been the one who's been on this, but I mean, weekly he's looking at those numbers, and I think we can do it. He and
The
I,
amount that you have available?
we do, and he's like a hawk on these vendors, so we're gonna get it under there further down if we can. So
That's encouraging, thank you. And then the last question is the 9/11 fees. What kind of pressure do we need to put on legislators to help us get that money to flow down to the individual communities?
that's a great question. Currently, there's no mechanism to apply for that funding. And I would say that any help you could provide through legislators to develop a mechanism where we could apply, we could take this paper that we wrote and send that to them with a request for a 50-50 match or something to help us, particularly with the CAD system that we're going to look at. We'll come back before council before we enter into any contract on that CAD system and present what we think, along with Chief Brown, that it was the best system for fire, because police and fire systems, they're not the same, and fire has some nuances that the chief has some opinions about what's the better CAD system. So we'll come before council to do that again, but we're ready and willing to go after funding if it's available. But we would ask for help to see if we can get that funding opened up
Well,
for
are you
cities and
aware,
towns.
I'm sorry, are you aware of any other communities that have been able to get some of that money?
I'm not
Not-
aware of it, but we continually watch for opportunities. We've applied for funding through the Emergency Management Rhode Island EMA for some of this stuff too. I know that Chief Brown has applied for CAD through the, I think last year, and was denied. So we always look for funding opportunities,
Okay, thank you.
and we'll continue to do so.
And I just got one question with that before Mrs. Baker wants. Is it the General Assembly or the governor who makes the choice on where, on spending that money?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
I mean, it all goes into the general fund
It does.
from there. So I mean, I would assume it's the governor's office. We've got to lobby for that unless the General Assembly were to say, to pass something and say, listen, X number of those dollars have to move.
Should go back to public
should
safety.
go back to public safety
communication.
in the communities.
Yep.
Yeah, so, okay. Maybe we can start working on putting something up and sending it off. Okay.
We'd
Mrs.
partner
Bacon,
up for that.
my apologies.
Is this on? Yep. On page 44 of 80, I don't know if you have it, this
Yep.
table. The Cybercom, it says equipment move, 71,810. What equipment move? Because what's that?
Well, there's going to have to be some equipment that's moved out of that building over to that building, and then there's going to be purchases of equipment too. They're going to have dispatch consoles that will mirror ours, so we can get you a copy of exactly that breakdown.
Yeah, because
if
on
you
there it
want it.
didn't look like they had any equipment.
Well, yeah, they don't. They have some antiquated equipment. They have the radio systems and things like that, but we're going to upgrade that. So we would purchase a 5500 system or something like it to build into that small room next to ours, which will mirror what we have.
Okay,
That
and can
funding.
you explain, it says on here markup 5%?
Yeah, the markup on that is because it will come up under the tower construction umbrella, so there has to be a markup on certain things that they do, their electrical does to the project. So things we buy specifically for fire alarm won't have a markup on them, but the actual labor and things that, as it comes up under us for the build and actually putting it into the building, it'll have to have a markup in the bond.
Okay, and when you say the bond, that's the bond that we
Yeah.
took out for this. Now, when this went before the voters, this was not part of the plan, so how can it go under the bond? I guess that's probably not a question for you. I guess it would be for Nick, because the voters voted for the DHS and the police building, but not fire alarm going over. So was that part of the original when the people voted for? No?
No.
Okay, so the
But that's
bond-
not, that funding is not bond funding.
It's not bond funding?
No, this is
all from
EMA funding.
the EMA funds.
Okay, what's bond 2% then? I'm
That's what they put into, the
Is
bond
this
is
like an
what,
insurance bond?
yes, for the project itself. So
Okay,
even
it's-
though we're paying them, that EMA funds, that 2%, they still charge for that work.
Okay, but it's not coming out of the bond?
It's not coming out of bond money.
Okay, I get
No.
that, that was my
This- it's
confusion.
just
This is
a-
complete and separate apart from the bond money.
Okay.
That
We
money
couldn't
was
do that
never
legally.
earmarked for this, and that's why it
Yeah,
cannot be used that way.
that's why I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask. And it says symposium for CAD, what does that mean?
Symposium is a vendor that we just discussed that
Okay.
Chief Brown considers very good. But as I wrote into the town council resolution, we would come back to the council before we entered into any contract on that. So we expect that the CAD system would be, we're going to get them into the building first and then research what CAD system is the right one and then bring it before council.
So this 45,000 isn't the entire system then?
That is the upfront cost for CAD.
Just the,
That's an estimate, though. We haven't really entered into them giving us a quote, but we've been talking to them to get an estimate for
would
them.
that include training? Because you would need, I would assume, training?
I would think so, yeah. I would say if that's your upfront cost, they're going to come out to install it, and then there will be a training period for the dispatchers. So, obviously, it's new to them. Same thing what we did when we got IMC.
And will there be a yearly,
There is a yearly fee.
okay, so we don't know that either
We
right
don't
now?
yet. So that's something we're going to have to probably talk with the districts about to see the yearly fee. We are estimating between 6,000 and 8,000. We pay 18,000 for IMC for the police side per year. So that would have to come from a source, and we're looking at the EMA communication fund to do that. So we may go back and say, hey, we need a little bit more each year to make sure that we can fund that
And that
properly.
would come from the fire districts?
It could come from the districts or an up on the EMA side from the town side as well. I think it's something we just have to sit down and talk about.
Because you're really tight for money right now. If you, with the CAD and then the maintenance, you're gonna go over budget, correct? You won't have the money in the EMA fund right now?
Maintenance will be next year.
Yeah, it wouldn't be.
Maintenance will not be this first year. There's no, it's.
The 45 up front would probably include like a year or two
Of the maintenance. There's
the
no,
maintenance
you don't
fees.
get hit with a maintenance charge that first year when they install it. That's all part of the package.
I don't expect that we would get into a CAD contract probably for at least 6 months
Yeah,
anyway.
that's not gonna take place till probably, in the year 2000. It'll be past January by the time that gets done and signed off on. The town is actually, the way the contract works with Chief Brown and Hopkins Hill managing there, we are responsible, the town itself is responsible for the cost associated with the dispatch center. Like I got a couple of computers ordered for them as part of this already, and coming out of the IT budget for that. So there are costs that we handle every year, as the chief had mentioned earlier. The phones, the heat, the electric, all of that stuff is all covered by the town because we're obligated to provide that.
So there's 12,000 probably in savings to the town yearly just in that building itself, and that would easily cover what we think the maintenance for a CAD system would be.
Okay. And then the fire marshal plan review fee of the 41,000, where's that coming from?
That's already in the project. That's already accounted for in the bond for the project.
That's already in the bond?
Say that again?
That's already been paid for, so that we're all set on
We
that?
haven't paid it yet, but it's going to be paid. It's accounted for within the project.
Okay. And when you gave us the update on the fire alarm facility aging, you had put in here, I spoke with, I'm assuming it's you.
Yes.
Okay, I spoke with the Coventry Historical Society and Chief Brown on separate occasions about how this building would be better suited as a fire museum in the future, given its history. Is there plans on selling the building to?
I don't, that would be out of my lane, but we've had those discussions. I think,
Because once, I'm just wondering, because, we're going to have to maintain that building.
The
even if
answer
they
would be
come
yes on that, Mrs. Bacon. That you'll be seeing a resolution for that one as
Pretty
well
shortly after.
for sale of that building.
Okay. Okay, so I don't mean to be hopping on the bond, but you said for the fire marshal, the plan review for having fire alarm move in, that's okay coming out of the bond, even though?
What, are you talking about the fire alarm, the fire marshal review of the plans for the building?
For this room, do they have,
No, no.
there's nothing?
I don't
that's-
know what that, I
No.
don't know where you got that.
Yeah, that's
There's no review plan.
not for this.
No. For the whole project there is.
Okay,
That was accounted for in the original bond.
okay. So we're good for this.
I
As
think
long
it's
as you're good for it, we're
I think
good
it's
for it.
money well spent.
I
We're-
personally
I
think I
agree.
think it's a great move. I think it's needed. I've spent a lot of time in the Chief Murk Building doing installations, repairs, phones, you name it. I've done it in there, and I am not going to miss that building in the least bit because the equipment is antiquated. I'm running serial cables around the place, serial connections. You can't even buy computers with serial connections anymore. And it's just a real difficult situation to keep that place operational. It makes so much sense to move them in. The cost to reconnect the new building to the Murk Building, that cost alone shouldn't be wasted on that. It should be utilized, which it will be, to put this into one building where it belongs and take full advantage of a new facility, the ability to work side by side is going to be great.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
makes
it's
perfect
necessary.
sense. I was just surprised that this was never discussed at the very beginning, because it just seems
It
like it all goes
actually-
hand in hand.
It was.
It was.
There was discussions of 18 months ago to a year ago between myself and the chief. And
Oh, I guess let me clarify, when we presented it to the voters, I think, when this was all being presented.
Sure, I don't think you can come out in front though and know every contingency
I
that's
know,
going to
yeah.
come up. So it's one
Yeah.
thing that came up that's an opportunity, I think.
Oh, I
From the
think it's a
public
wonderful
safety side?
opportunity, exactly. Yeah,
So, I mean, having us together in
Makes
that building,
it's
if
common
we have
sense.
storms, any kind of big major event, we're gonna be co-located right side by side. It's just much better than the current condition down
And
the
you're
street.
gonna keep those binders as part of the museum?
We're gonna give it to we're gonna give it to the paint house. Yeah. No, I mean, the technology is just old in that building. We've been
Yeah.
fighting this for years. I mean, it's a big number for CAD. We understand that, but we need to get there. There's a lot of other benefits for us moving. Insurance service organization ratings. I know the Colonel has done an excellent job with Leva said on this, on the draft, the paper that he gave you. But just ISO ratings, out of a possible 10 points on an ISO rating, fire alarm draws a 4. So how does upgrading in fire alarm and getting that number up is absolutely huge. For Hopkins Hill Fire District, we're lacking to be a Class 2 fire department by 1.5 points. So just moving and getting CAD, moving into a building that's NFPA compliant, being able to have a CAD program to provide ISO when we get 911 calls, how quick do we answer them and how quick do we get apparatus on the road? Those are things we can't provide ISO right now, so we get no points for that. So 1.5 points will push Hopkins Hill Fire District and other fire districts and maybe to a better ISO class, which represents insurance savings on the fire part of your insurance homeowner policy. A little bit smaller for residential, but for commercial, it's absolutely huge to move from one ISO rating to another. So just that alone is a benefit, to the town and the taxpayers. A benefit to the people that work there. They're not working in a building by themselves anymore. There's been times that I hear people calling in on the radio. Maybe the dispatcher's not answering the radio. I'm concerned. But maybe they're on the phone. There's one person in the building. Who's to say that person didn't take sick and ill and, can't answer the phone. So we're providing a better level of safety for our people, which is paramount, And everything the Colonel talked about, he's absolutely right, is, this needs to be done out of interoperability reasons, to work together, and to stand together for public safety in the town is, it's paramount. And the money's there. I mean, the money that the fire districts have been contributing, it's something we probably got to look at more so for that annual fee for CAD. I'm sure there'll be, I hope there is a willingness for every fire district to step up and do it, because they should, because it's the right thing to do.
I'd just like to say that none of the cost associated with this impacts the bond, the DHS PD bond at all. That's why it's being funded the way it is. So because again, it wasn't approved as part of it. The space was the space that was always there. Nothing's changed on that. So but coming out of this, it's allowed, and that way we don't have an issue with how we funded it.
All right. Mrs. Dixon.
Chief Brown, you did raise a question that I was going to ask, and that is, what do you anticipate will be additional costs for each fire district? Because right now they're paying $2,500 a year. What additional costs do you anticipate might be incorporated into that fee?
Yeah, right now, we don't know that cost. I mean, we got to look at what CAD program we go with. I know the one we're looking at currently is called Symposium. That's what most cities and towns are going with. It links with the 911 center in Situate. And with Symposium, the first 2 years, there is no annual fee, that $8,000. So we do get a couple years where we don't have to pay. So it's probably something that, the other fire districts, once we decide what program we're going with, to look at that number and, it would only be fair that it goes up because it's going to benefit each fire district by their ISO rating. So why wouldn't they contribute to it? So I speak for two of them, and I know some board members are in the room for other fire districts, and I hope they would be on board with this. It's the right thing. It's providing a higher degree of compliance to their fire districts and providing them the data they need, getting trucks on the road sooner. Why wouldn't we support this?
Right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anybody else? That's it? Questions?
I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation and the proposal, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Appreciate that. All right.
Can we move that resolution up, and that way, instead of them, it's one down instead of letting it sit. If we'd go to
Oh, yeah, I was going to
C2, and that way we can do the
Right.
resolution right away.
Right, if we have a resolution for this, for approval, so, if we
Yes.
wanna move to that,
Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve this resolution for the move of the fire alarm and to Wood Street, and I'll accept the second.
I would like to hear the motion spoken exactly.
You wanna read out
Not the whole thing, but what's in bold,
Oh,
a
okay.
resolution. I think the motion should be as stated.
Okay,
A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Coventry authorizing Town of Coventry to co-locate fire alarm within the new police department communication center at 60 Wood Street.
I make a motion to support the resolution.
the second, okay. Any discussion? No, we're all done with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, that's 5, okay, the, next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, C1, right? Yeah, right, C1, so it is for the approval of settlement and mutual release agreement between Andrea, Penardo, and the Town of Coventry, which is what we were in executive session regarding. And actually, just for a quick overview, can I hand that off to our solicitor or manager, whoever feels comfortable discussing?
This is a settlement of a pension claim that's been pending for a couple of years. We discussed it in executive session. It's advantageous to the town to resolve the litigation. The payment would be approximately, I think, $51,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it where it is on the settlement?
see that.
I'm sure on the settlement itself.
Yeah, it was $51,000. That was, I think that's the payment.
Yes.
And
$51,000.
I think we agree that is a good settlement for the town, considering all the outstanding claims. There were claims that derived from mistakes that were made in computing the pension many years ago. Unfortunately, we inherited this problem. I think we've been able to resolve it in a fairly expeditious way, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Any additional questions at all? We had a good discussion in executive session, so I'll accept the motion for the settlement and mutual release agreement between Andrea Penardo and the Town of Coventry.
Mr. Solicitor, does the amount have to be in that motion?
We're actually voting on the document,
On the
but it would
document.
be worthwhile to read the exact amount.
The exact amount is $51,000.
Which is what I said. I thought there might
Yep.
be.
Yeah, there's no sense, no change,
No.
that's it. $51,000 even.
I make a motion to approve the settlement and mutual release agreement between Andrea Penardo and the Town of Coventry for the sum of $51,000.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Put all that on there. Next, we've done that. Next thing is item C3. And if, Madam Clerk, if you would read that, please, for me.
National Grid, Verizon pole location request, 375 Narrow Lane and 801 Gibson Hill Road.
Okay, Mr. Manager?
These are routine requests from Verizon / National Grid. Anytime they need to put up a new pole that's on the right of way of the town's property, it's supposed to come up in front of the council to get approval. I started bringing these back up. I had one a few months ago, only because I think it's the appropriate way to do it. In the past, it had been approved by DPW, and I'm just looking for, these are standard. It just allows them to put the pole in.
Oh, okay, all right. Any questions? Okay. All right, I'll accept the motion for to authorize the interim town manager to grant permission to the National Grid Verizon for petition of for the joint identical pole location at 375 Narrow Lane and 801 Gibson Hill Road.
I second the motion.
Okay, I was asking for a motion, but
Oh,
that's
I'm
okay. I'll
sorry.
take-
I thought you read
You know
it.
what? I'll make the motion and I'll take that second. How's that? Okay,
Okay,
all
I
in
thought you-
favor?
It was read like a motion. You did a great job.
Thank you, thank you. So I finally got a little approval from Mrs. Dixon. Thank you.
You
I
get it every
appreciate-
day. You get it every day.
Okay, so are we all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, yes, 3 votes. Yes, we are in favor. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next on the list, we go to D, licenses for discussion and interaction. Madam Clerk. Should we do all, can we do all of them at once? I don't- Usually we read these separately.
do. I think
I
it's,
know that everybody feels comfortable reading them separately, so
Yes.
take them one at a time.
Okay. Application by Tammy Capezza, doing business just for fun for a new 90-day peddler license, mobile gift shop.
Okay, mobile gift shop is I don't know, just for fun. Is Tammy here? Liz, would you come up and tell us a little bit about your mobile gift shop? You use like a drone or something out there to drop things off?
No, good evening. It is a picture of food truck without the food and
Okay.
gifts.
What type of gifts?
Jewelry, scarves, little gadgets, flashlights.
Okay, it's now, is it going to be a stationary?
No,
vehicle?
it
You know,
is-
in
it's
other
a
words,
box
I mean,
truck.
but I mean to find it now. How will you go about your business when people will place a call and you'll go to their home?
Yes,
and that-
fundraisers, home parties,
Okay.
and it will travel
Right,
wherever.
So in other words, you're not going to be sitting on one of the lots like some of the food people, do
No,
that.
if someone books the truck, it will be a 2 to 3 hour event, which I will be, sitting there for those designated hours.
Okay.
But after that, after the event is over, then the truck would be relocated to its home residence.
Oh, okay, all right, and then, home, but that's always my concern, just, okay, if we're setting up as a retail outlet somewhere out on Tywick Avenue, we have the other ones there. I'm good. Any additional questions at all?
I have a question. It says for a 90-day peddler's license, what are the dates for the 90 days?
I don't have any events booked yet. I needed to get my license first. I will continue. I will probably do every 90 days, I'll renew it.
Mrs. Solicitor, how does that work? Does she get a 90-day license? If we approve tonight, does she get a 90-day license that starts today?
The ordinance allows a maximum of 90 days, but I think you're right. You asked, when does it
When
begin?
does it start?
Well, tonight is the application. Really, typically, I think it's from the date the clerk actually issues the license. So it'll be a couple days from now, maybe tomorrow.
My license is effective
Oh, that's a condition. Okay.
July 1st is with the state. My license with the state begins on July 1.
Oh, okay, so you would make it effective
So-
July 1 for 90 days from there? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I just asked because you said when you would begin when you got your first order, so I didn't know when the 90 days.
Tentative opening right there, it says July.
90
July
days
1
starts
is fine.
cooking off, okay.
That's fine.
And then that with the end of the period,
The-
if finds
the-
whether
the-
she has appointments or not, should it renew it before the end of, for another 90 days. Okay. All right.
I just have one, the truck registration on the application, since it is a mobile, can we make sure that that truck registration gets on the application?
I submitted the registration and the insurance to the licensing clerk, so that is on
Okay.
file with the town.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, just on our copy, it didn't have it, so I just.
That is already on file, so
Okay,
yes.
terrific, thank you.
So the clerk is authorized to issue it July 1st or thereafter, whenever the conditions are met.
Great, thank you.
Okay, all right. And like I said, the appropriate insurances are applicable on there and done. Great, thank you. Okay, any additional comments or discussion? Okay. Motion to approve the license.
I make a motion to approve the application by Tammy Capezza for a new 90-day peddler's license for a mobile gift shop.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
All right. That's one. Okay, number 2.
Application by Kimberly McGee, doing business as Rhode Island Organics for a new 90-day peddler license, 301 Hopkins Hill Road.
Hello there.
Good evening.
Now, we've done, is this the second time we've done?
Yes, about 2 years ago, I
Yeah.
had a peddler's license
Yeah.
as well. We're going to change it up a little bit. It's going to be more of an honor system, produce stand, and we're not going to be setting up tents or anything.
Okay, so you'll place your things out there and people
Yeah.
will come in and do the.
Yeah, we run a business out of the home where we deliver throughout the state, so it's basically going to be, overages that we have or, something special that we think the neighborhood might enjoy.
So it went 2 years ago, I guess, went well enough that you do it, but
Yeah,
a little
like I said, we're
differently.
changing it because, it was just too unpredictable being open every day. If it's a nice beach day, we wouldn't get any customers. If it was raining, we wouldn't, it would be a low day for us. And then other days, there'd be so many people that we couldn't keep up with the volume. So,
All right.
so
Well,
we're
is-
doing it a little different.
Great. Well, I see that zoning officer has no concerns. The police, a retail sales permit is in order, and again, insurance is of a business type insurance or
Yes,
homeowners.
I have
Okay,
a farm ag insurance for
Okay.
homeowners and for the business.
great, thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to approve the application by Kimberly McGee, DBA Rhode Island Organics, for 90-day hawker license.
Just as a correction, it's Rhode Island Organic with no S at the
Oh,
end.
with no S, Rhode Island Organic. Okay, I'll cross that off.
All right, thank you very much.
I make a motion to approve the application by Kimberly McGee, doing business as Rhode Island Organic, for a new 90-day peddler license at 301 Hopkins Hill Road, Coventry, Rhode Island.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3.
Application by Pelagi's 2000 Incorporated, doing business as Pelagi's Ice Cream for renewal of a 90-day peddler license, ice cream truck.
Okay. I don't think Mr. Pelagi is here. We've done this a number of times, and the dates I see July 15th through October 13th. So his present license, I would assume, expires on that date and moves forward, because I've seen him. No issues with the police. Zoning officer has no concerns, and there's a valid retail sales permit. Okay, I'll accept a motion to approve the license.
I make a motion to approve the application by Pelagi's 2000 Incorporated, doing business as Pelagi's Ice Cream, for renewal of a 90-day peddler license, ice cream truck.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Application by NCD LLC, doing business as The Sweet Spot Nutrition for a new victualling license, 16 Coventry Shopper Park.
Okay, is the applicant here? Okay, hello there.
How are you?
Great, you.
Good.
Tell us about your new venture.
It's going to be a nutrition club. Basically sell powders, teas, boosters, aloe, everything protein pretty much. So.
It's in the Dave's Plaza, so that's
Yep.
Coventry Shoppers
Yep,
Park
like a
area.
shake shop, pretty much.
Okay. Everything seems to be in order. When are you expecting to get the door open?
Well, we're hoping for like mid-August. So
Okay, so you're working,
Just depends
renovating, get everything all set and done, and beautiful, excellent. Any questions at all? Okay, well, I mean, I'll make that motion then. Application by NCD LLC DBA The Sweet Spot Nutrition for a new victualling license at 16 Coventry Shoppers Park. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
thank
Good
you,
luck.
guys.
Okay.
Application by New England Authentic Eats LLC, doing business as D'Angelo's for a new victualling license, change of ownership, 795 Tyoke Avenue.
All right. Okay, I know that person had to work, so, but I don't think we have any specific questions. It was a change of ownership of the D'Angelo's on Tyrek Avenue. And it doesn't look like there's are any issues, and then the applicant's in the process of changing over all of the other pertinent licenses. So I'll make the motion to approve the application by New England Authentic Eats LLC, DBA D'Angelo, for a new victualling license, change of ownership, 795 Tyoke Avenue.
I second. Go ahead,
Okay.
Deborah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Application for fireworks on July 4th by JCPA, John Giusti.
Okay, this, obviously the Johnson's Pond Civic, group to the association, the pond, for their annual fireworks display. Any discussions at all on that, or any questions? I don't think we have anybody from Johnson's Pond. Group here.
The application said that they have a rain date of July 5th, so when we make the motion, we should include that as a possible date too.
It's fine, yeah, for the 4th of July or the rain date
Yes,
of the two of them. Okay,
exactly.
all right. Okay, so I'll accept that motion. Mrs. Bacon has a question.
I just have, has the state fire marshal, have they approved this?
That
I
has
know it's been applied.
Yeah, I would think that if it wasn't approved, it would never get off. Anyway, the applications with the fire marshals, has that been,
They won't be issued until
they
come in.
until that time, yeah. So if they didn't have the approval, they would never get to,
Any of these are, unless they've been all the paperwork,
yeah.
Okay.
they don't get issued.
Yeah,
All
they're,
right.
they're all subject to that. And the
Thank
display
you.
location is 3 Osprey Drive over there, so. All right, I'll accept the motion.
I make a motion to accept the application for fireworks on July 4th with a rain date of July 5th by JCPA, John Giusti.
John PC. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Application for renewal of auto salvage license for RC repair with the provision subject to the Town of Coventry zoning ordinance. Russell L. Chattel, 625 Hammett Road.
okay. Is Mr. Chattel, yeah, that's it, right there, right in front. Okay, anybody have any questions regarding this license at all?
It said that it's subject to the Town of Coventry zoning ordinance, so I'm just wondering, has that process been followed yet?
No, the process, to my knowledge, has not been followed. The process has not been followed, to my knowledge. But what raised us concern about this is that there was an agreement signed by the town solicitor, Frederick Tobin, several years ago, in a proceeding before the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation regarding this particular license for auto salvage, which to some degree are controlled by the state and are also at the same time controlled by this town council. That's why it's on the agenda tonight. But the agreement that was made and signed by the town solicitor indicated that the capacity of the auto salvage on Mr. Chattel's property would be no more than 300 cars. And I simply want to point out that that's a zoning issue, the intensity of the use. It's not something that the solicitor can bargain away, or anybody can bargain away, including this town council. That's, the zoning ordinance is subject to its own enabling act. It's enforced by staff in the town, and the only body that can authorize deviations from it is the Zoning Board of Review, which is a quasi-judicial body. So I'm simply alerting that although this license is going to be approved, it's been approved for several years previous, we do want to make that point, that there is not and there cannot be an assent by the town to allow 300 auto salvage cars to be placed on that property unless there is, in all probability, some type of zoning approval.
Shall we, just a question for you, shall we wait to approve this application for a license until we have some ruling by the zoning board?
Is it up before the zoning board? at
No,
this
it's
point?
not.
No,
It's
no,
not. It's just
not up
something
before.
that came up, that was presented, that it came to my attention
Right.
that there had been a so-called agreement, an agreement which I would consider, to the extent that it authorized a deviation from the zoning ordinance, that agreement was void. It was ultra virus. The solicitor doesn't have the power to enter into an agreement like that. We've had this happen before, and we've taken the exact same approach. So I think you can authorize the license. It's simply a license that you issue. That does what I'm clarifying, what I'm suggesting that the town council clarify in issuing this license is that does not in any way indicate that this is permitted by zoning, because that's something you couldn't do.
How many cars are permitted? How many salvage cars are permitted?
Up to 300
Up to
under the agreement, the purported agreement, which I think is ultra virus. I don't
What is the
know. I don't know the
What
number.
does the ordinance state?
The ordinance, I don't think it specifies a number.
Okay.
So if so at this point, my concern has always been if he's living within that ordinance at this point in time, and is, at this point, he is living within the ordinance. There's nothing to suggest that there's
Well,
any zoning,
living within the-
zoning violations.
Yeah, living within the ordinance is, I think, pretty simple, because you really just have to come get a license from the town council each year.
And there's
There
no-
really isn't much other regulation.
But there
That
are no
is-
violations at this time?
There's no outstanding zoning violation to my knowledge.
Okay.
And I think in fairness to Mr. Chattel, there was a long-standing claim that this was grandfathered, that he had established this use before 1980, when the first valid Coventry zoning ordinance was enacted. On the other hand, if you want to expand any legal non-conforming use, you have to go to the zoning board and get permission to expand it.
Right.
And in general, any expansion or retention of a legal non-conforming use is not favored by zoning. It's not favored by law. And in fact, the Supreme Court has said the policy of the state is to extinguish legal non-conforming uses. So with all of that said, I see no prejudice in the town council issuing this license tonight, particularly now that we've clarified this issue.
Okay. All right, well, with that being said, are there any
The-
additional
You
questions?
don't think it was a clarification, Member Dixon? So-
With that being said, I'm going to accept the motion to approve the license, or the application for the renewal of the auto salvage license.
But it says subject to the zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Ordinance.
always subject to that. Yeah, obviously, if he falls outside
Any
of the
license we
ordinance.
issue is subject to
It's always
zoning,
subject.
always.
Okay.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that someone has to go to zoning. Is that
No,
correct?
no,
No.
no, 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 no. Meaning if he had a zoning violation, if he was issued a notice of violation, it'd be like any other.
Yeah.
Notice.
I
But
think-
as stated, there's no notices of violation.
The council has approved this license for a number of years, 15, 20 years, and every year it's been approved. And it's always, it's the same way. And it's just to, the stipulation in there is to make sure that we do it the right way. But it's been approved by councils going year after year after year under the same conditions.
So, Mr. Waziga, this is in your neighborhood, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, any issues with the neighbors?
Not that I'm aware of on this at all.
Okay,
I have never heard any complaints about this.
What often happens is when property is transferred or sold, the new owner comes in, he reads a license agreement, it says, oh, I can have up to 300 cars here. And then the next thing you know, that person is coming before the town saying, hey, this is what I paid for, this is what I want, this is what I think I got. This is simply to make sure that it's clear to everybody that that is not necessarily simply because the solicitor signed an agreement saying up to 300. That agreement was never approved by the town council. I checked all the minutes thereafter. It was never approved by the town council. All that happened was the town council, in its usual somewhat perfunctory fashion, issued this license after that. It didn't specify how many cars, and it shouldn't have.
Okay.
So, is that a little better?
Right.
It's great.
So Dixon, would you like to make that motion? That's in your
I'll
district.
pass on that.
Oh, okay, then then I will make the motion, okay, to approve the application for the renewal of the auto salvage license of Russell Chaptel, DBA RC Repair. Second motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. And so that sounded like 3 ayes to me. So
Thank you,
3-0.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right.
You're welcome.
Right. All right. Next one is E, the resolutions. Would you read that, Madam Clerk?
Approval of sewer tie-in, Centerville Bank, 777 Tyoke Avenue, plat 37, lot 114.0.
Okay. This came before the sewer subcommittee last Wednesday evening, approved unanimously. Apparently, they had a septic and plumbing issue, which now, with the amount of work that was necessary, the ordinance required them to connect to the sewers in that instance. So it was approved unanimously. If you have any discussion or any questions on that, if not, I'll accept a motion to approve the sewer tie-in of Centerville Bank, 777 Tyoke Avenue. Okay, I made the motion then. I was going to accept it, but I'll make the motion, and there's the second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Consider that as my motion. Okay.
We need an executive session on how to make motions.
Well, a little confusion tonight with only 3 of us. With only 3 of us here, so a little, again, not the usual man running it. Okay,
You're doing
which
a
moves
great
us
job.
to the letter F, first reading for discussion and/or action. Madam Clerk.
Introduction and first reading of amendment to Chapter 191 Sewers, Section 14 Assessment, subsection H of the Coventry Code of Ordinances.
Okay. Mr. Solicitor, all's in your court now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is simply an amendment to the sewer ordinance that would change the interest on the unpaid balance for sewer assessments from 6% to 0.5% greater than the weighted rolling average annual interest rate paid by the town.
Okay.
This would, in all probability, result in a significant reduction in the interest rate paid by constituents of the sewer system who have, received an assessment from the town or been subject to an assessment by the town. The other change it makes a little later in the amendment is it closes what's somewhat of a, not a loophole, but something that has the potential to make dealing with initial sewer assessments confusing. The initial sewer assessment for a piece of property would typically take place on a larger piece of property when the sewer line goes by that property. Later, the developer may choose to subdivide it or turn it into condominiums or otherwise divide up the interest in that property into smaller pieces. When that happens, according to our ordinance as it was amended a couple of years ago, a betterment assessment is made. That's an additional assessment. However, and so each person buying one of those smaller pieces of the lot, for example, a smaller lot in a subdivision of a large parcel, would pay a betterment assessment in addition to the initial assessment. But it makes it very hard for the sewer department to account for the initial assessment and to portion that evenly among all of the subsequent partial buyers of that parcel. And so the simplest, easiest, and most practical way, and I think it's fair to the property owner who's subdividing their property, is to provide, as this amendment does, that the initial sewer assessment must be paid when the property is subdivided or otherwise divided in any fashion, such as condominium or anything like that. That has to be paid by the original owner upon that division. So, for example, if you had a big subdivision on a 20-acre piece of property and you got, let's say, 10 lots out of it, and the planning board approved it, you would then, at that point, sometime after that, you would be required, once you begin marketing the property, the smaller lots, you'd be required to pay off that initial assessment. This is at the request of the sewer tax collector, who is Monique Houle. This was a problem that she presented through the administration. It has to be dealt with.
What happens with this is when those original piece of property is broken up, that lot actually ceases to exist. All the new lots get new lot numbers. So what happens is she gets to a point, if they don't voluntarily pay this, she doesn't even have anything that she can put on tax sale because it doesn't exist anymore. So what she's looking to do is that original developer, before he gets to do that, he simply has to make good on whatever that original assessment is, so the town doesn't lose out on that amount of money, which can happen if we don't have a lot that exists anymore that we can actually tax sale. So that's why that change needs to be made.
Now, that is solely for a lot that is subdivided. For
Correct.
instance, I know that there was some confusion out there with the line that the entire outstanding balance of the assessment shall become due immediately upon the transfer of any portion, which 100% is a portion. So there was misunderstanding that somehow we were not going to allow a subsequent owner to abide by the 20 annual payment.
That is not what it's about.
Solely upon a subdivision. And now, for instance, let's say that parcel of that, say, using Mr. Gorham's example of 20 acres, was transferred as 20 acres with a payment that's on it, that would carry forward until such time that a subdivision was made.
That's right. That's right. And that's what happens now. It's just an accounting nightmare, and also probably is going to create a lot of title problems for people who own a lot that is subject not only to the initial assessment, unless it's discharged, which is what this would do. So, but it would create a problem for them because it would be subject to the initial assessment and also the betterment assessment. And the initial assessment, if it could be properly accounted for, could be discharged, but it would really be an accounting nightmare. According to the administration, this is the simpler, better way to do it, and it's fair.
Right. So, any additional questions at all at this time for anybody else?
I do. Just a couple of points of clarification. In the first section, it says that the assessments shall be payable by the parcel owner annually over not more than 20 years, commencing the year following sewer installation. So my question to you is this: does this mean that if sewer installation occurred, say, on January 1st, 2020, does that mean that the first payment would not be due till August 2021 because it's the following year? Is that what this means? So if something happens in year one, it's the following year when they have to start paying. So actually, we could be carrying this for a year and a half without any revenue coming in whatsoever?
That happens all the time now.
Well,
That happens all the time when you do these. That first payment is a year out.
but it could be more than a year out, couldn't it?
Well,
I'm
it's
trying
when
to
the, it's-
determine, I mean, because the rate is very low, that means, which is a good thing for the residents, but it also means that there's less revenue coming into the enterprise fund. And so if have a year, it could be up to a year and a half out before we start collecting any money.
That first tax bill goes
Yeah,
out of
that
the
could be a
next year.
problem
Well, that's
for us,
what-
and I'm wondering
Well,
about
it-
what that's gonna do to the fund.
That, like I said, that's been a reoccurring issue with, since it started. They've always collected it out this way. It's always going out a year, giving the person, a year in advance for getting ready for it. The issue with this was to correct the problem with the interest rate, is the purpose of this. We weren't looking to change anything that's been existing prior to this. If you look at, and I passed out a copy of the proposed changes that
For the
the
state,
state was looking to do. We've kept the same 0.5% increase over the interest rate that we're charged. The problem with what the state's got, it doesn't tell us what to do. It just says it's a half point over. Does it mean it's only any new bonds that we're doing? Is it the old bonds? It doesn't say. It doesn't talk about how you handle the fact that our bonds all charge a different amount of interest.
right?
Our system is not built to charge multiple interest rates for multiple properties. I mean, some of these bonds, their interest rate changes during the course of the bond. So what we're proposing in ours is the 0.5% max, but we want to do it as a rolling weighted average. So we collect 0.5% over for administrative costs on the total amount, but we're not overcharging some, undercharging others, or trying to manually do this. Every year, there'll be an adjustment made in June to determine what that upcoming fiscal year's rate's gonna be. We've done this already for this year, coming forward. I haven't got the exact figure off the top of my head. John's, Arnett, our finance director's out today. But I believe it was 2% and change, even though we've got some bonds that are 4% interest. So, again, I don't even know how we would do it under what the state's proposing, because it doesn't tell you what to do or how to do it. It just says 0.5 over the rate that you pay. Okay, that's great, but there's a lot of other factors involved. It doesn't cover it. We're trying to cover it in ours to make it so it is fair and equitable. The 0.5 for administrative cost over the cost of borrowing, but the cost of borrowing, the percentage is determined by the weighted average. So if we've got $1 million borrowed on a bond for 1%, and we've got $4 million borrowed at 3%, and another $5 million borrowed at 5%, we take the total, the average, and we come up with a number that equals, that will pay the amount that covers all of that interest. So we break it up and we cover it with everybody, and not try to split it up into each separate construction area or contract that went out the door. There's multiple parts in several of the contracts. There's 8 contracts. I believe we've got somewhere, again, off the top of my head, the number of bonds that we have are substantial, and the interest rates are from 1.25 to 4.23, I think is the highest one we're currently paying on. So to try and do that and be equitable, and now we're gonna charge some people 1.5% or less than 2%. We're gonna charge other people almost 5%. That isn't fair to the public to do it that way. So that's why we're taking the weighted, we're averaging it annually, and come out with a number that will be distributed in cost, a fair cost to everybody. Now, how this is gonna relate with the state putting forward what they're putting forward, that's gonna be a question for the solicitor if you pass this and change our ordinance. And then we'll have to work to do it. We're in compliance with what they're saying. We've just gone and cleaned it up better than what they're saying. They're saying 0.5, we're keeping 0.5, but we're explaining how we're gonna do it across the system.
So if I understand this correctly, this rolling average annual interest rate, we've got 0.5% over that, does that mean that every year the number might change for a residential owner?
It could change, but again, it's gonna change slightly because it's a rolling average,
Sure.
weighted average. So all of those numbers are in there. Where it's gonna change is, we've got several that are maybe 1.2 right now. They may go up to 1.4. Well, depending on the amount of money that bond is, it could drop it down a little bit. You know, even though I shouldn't say it's going to drop it down. It still would bring it up, but a very small amount. So like 0.00, you know, depending on the total amount borrowed and the total amount at each of those interest rates.
This sounds very fair to the residents.
It
Really does, and it seems reasonable. I'm just concerned about the delay in us capturing some of this revenue, because we're really giving people interest-free loans for, it could be over maybe a year and a half or more.
Well, that's more, again, it's not specified in here. We're looking at, we've looked at what this is gonna cost. We've also looked at the possibility of the interest. Like right now, the interest does not start until after that first payment. At that first payment is where interest starts getting calculated. So interest will more than likely have to be calculated from the beginning. And there's nothing in the ordinance that says we can't do it that way. It's just we've never done it that way. We've always done it at that first payment. And again, the amount, we're looking at this thing dropping to averaging out 2 and change, 2-point-something% interest versus currently at 6% interest. So I think this is a much fairer way than what the state's thrown out, because they really haven't explained how they want us to do it.
To answer your question, Member Dixon, the enabling legislation doesn't specify exactly when the assessment can be made. I think that the ordinance that you were talking about, the year following sewer installation, what I take that to mean is when they've laid the line in front of the property, not connected the sewer,
Right.
but just laid the line in
laid the
front
line.
of it. The following year, they can send out an assessment. I think that was just an administrative consideration. It could be done sooner, although usually with taxes, when, for example, they wanted to tax houses as they went up, they wanted to start taxing them, or as soon as they were done. They didn't want to wait for the next tax year. The General Assembly actually had to pass enabling legislation to do that, to allow towns to do that. Our enabling legislation for our sewer system doesn't specify when or how, but I think it's probably soon enough. We can change it, though.
Well,
I just wouldn't do it as part of this.
I just raised the question,
Yeah.
not understanding this. I want to make sure that things are fair to everyone and they completely understand what this means, when their bills are going to start to come out, when they're going to start to see changes,
Right.
et cetera.
Okay,
No, I just have it, you brought up a good point about sewer installation. What is sewer installation? Is it defined anywhere what that is?
I don't think it is, but I think the only way to construe that is that when it's installed in the street, not when you're connected to it necessarily.
Okay, because it's not defined, so,
Sewer installation, right? But you're right.
I mean, it could be
I think anyone reading that would say when it's laid in front of the property, installed in the
it could be
street.
day one of construction, it could be if it takes 6 months, I mean, but I
No,
think.
until you have to approve it. You have to that it's essentially finalized, and at that point, up until then, no, I mean, it doesn't go by the day they start work on that.
Okay, but
It's-
is
it's
it
once it's
anywhere in
completed.
in this ordinance, anywhere, is there a sewer installation definition?
I'm looking. I don't,
Okay.
not in the ordinance, but I was looking in the Enabling Act. I don't see it in the Enabling Act either.
So it's not tied to the completion road project is
Correct,
done,
that the pipe is done, it's connected, the road,
part of a definition.
I was gonna say, that sounds like a definition. That
We're in
is,
agreement.
how about it be worded, it be computed by the finance director and approved by the town manager prior to coming to council?
this is first reading, so anything
Oh,
can change.
Yeah.
You can change it any way we want, I mean, that's why the first reading.
For information, I just went through the entire enabling legislation looking for the word install or installation. It's not in there. I did that with the assistance of, the search program, but it's not in any of the 3 successive enabling acts that have given the town the authority to have the sewer system. So it's just not defined. If you want to define it, you can. I mean, it's up to the council. It's entirely your prerogative.
Okay, and I just want clarification with that one paragraph. The entire outstanding balance of the assessment shall become due immediately upon the transfer of any portion of or interest in such parcel, whether by subdivision or condominium or any other division of the property rights. So what about if someone sells their home? Does this,
It's not a division. It's not a
Okay.
subdivision. It's not a condominium, and it's not a breaking up of
but
their
it's a
property
transfer of any
rights.
portion of interest. So I just want to make sure, I want clarification here because.
Yeah. It could be.
So this is for developers then? Are you looking at developers?
That's primarily what it's probably.
So maybe we should define that then, because.
Well, if it's easier to say what is going to happen, not who is going to do it. That's just the approach I took. What is it that will trigger the payment of the outstanding balance on the 20-year plan, not who? I just thought that was a better approach. If you say developers, that's a pretty amorphous term.
If I had 20 acres and all I wanted to do was divide it up between my, 4 children, so to speak, if I had 4 children, that becomes a subdivision where where they've got the possibility of adding 3 more homes on there, but we've only paid, 1 sewer assessment. And that's it with the subdivision, in essence, of the land. I was trying to understand how, and that's what I was looking at too. It's like, okay, 100% is not the portion that is spoken. Maybe we can, somehow
it may need to be
clarify
cleaned
the
up.
language a little
Yes.
bit, a little differently but yeah, that's, I after going over it, it's strictly for people who are dividing it. Because that initial sewer assessment, okay, is, especially if it's being paid over time, that was the accounting nightmare that this came from the tax collector.
Right. This is only for when the lot disappears. When the old lot number disappears because the lot's been broken up, that lot number no longer exists. At that point, the town has no ability to go after anyone to get that money. So if they've made one payment on the assessment,
Actually, the town does. The
you
lien.
can go after it, but you
the
got
lien- but
nothing
it's
to put a lien
it's
on.
an accounting nightmare.
Yeah.
That's sort of the trouble, is that for subsequent buyers, the initial lien is on their the property they just bought, the lot. And that's probably not what they intended. And in fact, I think the entire lien could be enforced against any one lot. This simplifies it and says, before you divide it into small lots and you've got the benefit of a 20-year plan, you have to pay off that initial assessment. That's all that's at work here. Now, you're right. If you were really splitting hairs, you could say that if somebody gave a drainage easement on their property, that could trigger this. But I don't think that, there's always an absurd construction of an ordinance that could take place. I certainly, if I were a solicitor, I would rule that is not what this applies to. It applies to the development of the property that engenders more sewer connections. That's what it's really all about.
Anything else?
But we have a public hearing coming up.
Yeah.
We have to have the public
Yeah,
hearing by
it's on the
charter,
first reading.
and anybody who wants to make an amendment can. So if you think
Suggestions.
if you can clear that up, certainly.
When will the public hearing be?
It's controlled by the charter, but it would probably be the next meeting. I think there's a minimum number of days that have to. I think it's.
We have to post it in 10 days, and we've got, I believe it's 10 days that we have. We've got almost a full month before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so our council meeting in July?
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll
I don't
be
have
the
my
July
calendar.
22nd meeting.
July 22nd.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay. I've just got a statement of question. Actually, I'm looking at the state, the General Assembly amendment that you handed out, and in all honesty, I know they've put it up to a maximum of 0.5%, but yet in parentheses, they've got 5 basis points instead of 50 basis points.
Yeah.
So the parenthesis amount is definitely incorrect.
Yes.
But just to note, just to note it. Again, it's
They did it. They actually did this on the original, and then when they corrected it,
Yeah.
with the sub A,
yeah.
they corrected the verbiage, but they didn't correct
They
the
never
percentage
collected the amount.
number.
Okay. Now, also, now I know obviously the reasons and the things that was brought to the 50 basis points were brought to the General Assembly, et cetera. On our end, have there been any calculations at all to determine whether 0.5% is enough to actually cover the administrative costs that it's done? Are we sure that is going to cover our administrative costs? And what happens if it does go over that?
Well, it will
How
cov-
will we derive the funds for that?
Well, it will cover a piece of the administrative cost. We are in process. I will be bringing it in front of the council at the next meeting. We have received 2 proposals for sewer usage rate study that needs to be done. We've got those in. We're going to be bringing that in front of you. So what will happen is the reduction in the interest here will be offset, and it will have to be covered under the rate study. And any of the rate increases on that as well. I mean, which is where the majority of the administrative comes out of, not out of the assessment.
Out of the sewer use, not so much out
Out
of
of the assessment, it should be
Okay.
out of the use.
Out of use. Okay,
Exactly.
Great. That's that was a question. All right. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the last item, which is public comment. So anybody looking to have any public comment? Is there anybody looking to come up and address the council? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I figured that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you.